please welcome Wang. Ray.
This is awesome. Can you believe this? I love the whole screen, just like the other guy. This is amazing. So good morning, good afternoon. How are you doing? All right, so I'm going to start out using a framework talking about politics, economics, society, and then I'm going to walk you through some of the advantages of what we're going to look at, and then I'm going to ask you for a call to action. That's going to be important. So I'm going to pull all this together. I know some parts have been a little bit scary, other parts haven't. Now, we started yesterday with this conversation about the crisis of trust. We have a crisis of trust all across the board. And it's basically, we no longer know what to believe, right? We saw that throughout all the other presentations. We realized that there is a shift in how that trust looks. Now, the problem is, it's often very confusing. You get to use the whole screen. It is amazing. But you get to look at this as, I no longer know what is real because I no longer have the ability to ascertain what is correct and what is not correct. Now, this is happening across the board, right? And the most important part is to understand that it's happening across politics, economics, society. It's happening across technology, which is why we have to take a stand. Now, this first step here is really thinking about short-term fixes. Right? No matter where we go, our politicians have been thinking about how to solve problems within their time frame. If it's a 2-year cycle, if it's a 1-year cycle, if it's a 4-year cycle, they've done everything they can to solve a problem within their time frame, but they've kicked the can down the road because they don't want to solve the tough problems. And because we are in an era of short-termism among politicians and even business, it keeps us very, very hard to be able to do what we need to do next. Now, we've had some revolutions. People have risen up. You've seen the impact of what has happened. But that necessarily hasn't resulted in what we wanted to see. In fact, we replaced one form of dictatorship with another form of dictatorship in these scenarios. And every time they try to address this issue around jobs and growth, most politicians have failed. And so something that's interesting has happened. Despite this level of revolution, despite people asking for change, we end up with something even worse. We have extremism across the board. In fact, it turns out we like benevolent dictators. Who likes benevolent dictators? Raise your hands. We had a few people in dinner yesterday. But the point being is we want people to make decisive decisions. We want people to make strong decisions, except not when it's not what you wanted. And this is what we've ended up with. So over the last 10 years, we've actually put strong dictators in place, strong personalities, people who represent the people, right? If you ask people in their country, some people actually believe they have a strong leader. So it makes a very interesting problem. Now, adding to that complexity is this issue of immigration. There's legal immigration, which most people are for, and there's illegal immigration, which most people are against in some way or another. The question is, how do we bring all that together? But that has exacerbated the issue. People are now excited about what's going on. Now, if we think about what we want is we need new models. How do we create new models of trust? How do we build these new models so that we can be successful and avoid this winner-takes-all markets? You heard about platforms, platform economies, how technology is creating a winner-takes-all market. It is a winner-takes-all market. If you look at every mature market in every industry segment, the #1 player is bigger than #2 and 3 combined. When you hit that point, you've hit the point of no return. That's the point where regulation has to come into play. And that's what people forget, right? When you get to that point where you no longer have any competition in that marketplace, we now have a problem. But we have to look at competition at the business model level, and sadly, our politicians don't necessarily all understand that. And so that puts us on the society point, which is we have had a tough time dealing with these seismic shifts. We no longer have the ability to actually make that change. Now, if you've flown recently, who flies? I'm sure a lot of people fly. You've noticed that we have this situation here, right? This is basically the divide, right? Notice how big the first class cabin is. It's taking up most of the space. Notice that the premium economy section is a little bit smaller, and then we've got everybody else. This is a good representation of where we are today in terms of opportunity, in terms of divide, in terms of how people feel their prospects are. Look very familiar to you when you fly? So yes. So the question is, we now have a digital divide. We have income distribution issues, and so we have a lot of unrest in different markets. People feel they don't have the opportunity to be successful, and so how can we actually change that? Now, the other thing that's actually happening as well on a societal level is that people are willing to pay more for more value. And it's a very interesting scenario. They're willing to pay more for value, but at the same time, they're willing to pay less for a commodity item. And from a societal shift, we've actually now have a problem where if your brand is not a premium brand, you're a commodity. Nobody cares. And it's happening in consumer sentiment all across the board. The same person who would buy a very, very cost-effective Toyota might save up money for a very expensive Mercedes. It's the same person. They haven't changed. They've just assigned a value that this is commodity transportation, or maybe I don't even need transportation. I'm just going to use a ride-sharing service. Add that to the fact that because of all this despair, society is looking for heroes. Society is looking for heroes. And that's where we will play a role in terms of how we define it. Last week, I was sitting in a meeting, and it was the most interesting meeting. It was a number of my friends, and we were all in a very important event. And we were all complaining about how things were awful, right? Now, we're all somewhere between 40 and 50 in the age range, and we were all complaining how things were awful. When someone who worked for us pointed out, you guys are in charge. Do you realize? We are in charge. You're in charge. Right? The condition's in front of us. It's up to us to play that role as a hero, right? It was a very surprising statement. I'm like, oh my God, we are in charge. Oh my God, what do we do now? But that's the thing. It's up to us. We can make that change, and that's what society is looking for. Now, the other piece that's going to be important as we walk into this on that trust factor is how we handle the issue of privacy. And from a societal level, this is huge. The trust factor. Are we going to be a surveillance state? A digital dystopia, or are we going to actually have a digital utopia in terms of the comments of how we actually use and look at privacy? So the next step is to look at the economics piece and where we are from an economic level. And as we think about the economics, well, money is free. Quick question, if you put 100 yen in the bank in Japan, what do you get 3 years from now? Anybody? 90. Oh, that bad now? It's negative. In this market, capital is almost free. It sounds crazy. There's a lot of cheap money out there. Now, the problem is there's not a lot of cheap money for you if you work at an established company. And the reason there's not a lot of money for you is because the same investors who are willing to give $100 million to 2 kids in a startup anywhere in the world are never going to give you that money because they want you to continue to deliver on your returns. They want you to deliver an EBITDA. They want you to squeeze as much cost out of the organization so that them as investors can profit from you. And so they're not willing to give you the money to invest in innovation. Yet they're willing to give 2 strangers $100 million to go disrupt your business and your business model. And that's where the problem begins. And so what do? You buy other companies. You buy other companies to wring cost savings. And once you're done cleaning out a whole market, I'm going to pick on pharma for fun. We used to have 50 pharmas. We're now down to 20. Arguably, we're down to 10. What happened in the pharmaceutical industry? Anybody that was innovative, anybody that didn't want to work for a large company, they went to work for a biotech. What happened to the biotechs? They all got bought by the pharmas. Because there was no innovation at the pharmas. The innovation was at the biotechs, so they bought out the biotechs. This short-term thinking is what is at the heart of our problem is. We are under extreme EBITDA. And it does not allow you the ability to invest. Another example of this is, I think, I think it's 2 years ago, I was at a Capgemini Spark event. That was a very interesting event, and Clay Christensen was on stage. And for the first time, I actually paid attention to one of his slides. And in that one slide, what he showed was that the average amount of revenue, profits, and how they were split up had shifted. In the 1950s, almost 80% went back to R&D, and by the time we got to today, less than 5% goes back to R&D. In fact, everything goes back to stock buybacks and dividends. You're being starved of innovation, which is the challenge. So as we look for growth, as we look at these, this is why we've had such stagnation for quite some time in unemployment. Now, you could do what the US is doing. We're just printing more money. It works pretty well, too, right? But it only works if you're a reserve currency. So that's kind of how we're getting out of the mess. Now, the last piece is really around the legislative pieces, and this is interesting. Taxation keeps growing as populations decline. Got to pay for services. And lobbying efforts continue to increase. So what is the challenge? Well, the real challenge is, actually, I'm going to take a step back. The real challenge is we've run out of things to buy, right? To buy your vote with. Politicians are buying your votes on the consumer side. Let me give you free housing. Let me give you free food. Let me give you free education. Let me give you free healthcare. On the business side, let me give you a trade deal. Let me give you a tax break. Let me give you an empowerment zone. Let me give you an R&D credit. We're running out of free things to give away. And that's really causing that next level of problem. Now, privacy is another interesting thing. This is a backlash. I'm going to say this as an American, which sounds funny because we're in the Canary Islands of privacy. GDPR is not enough. In fact, GDPR doesn't address the right sets of issues. And I think you're going to have to go a little bit more than GDPR. And I think that's something we're going to have to talk about in terms of what that data is and how that data should be used. And we will get to that in a bit. So where are we with tech? If you ask the question, is technology good or technology evil, you get many different answers, depending where you ask the question. In metropolitan areas, most people see technology for good. For a younger demographic, most people see technology for good. It's changed my life. It's improved my living, right? It's given me more opportunities. It's connected me to new things. It's expanded my mind. If you add an older generation and a more rural generation, it destroyed my jobs. It took everything away. My mind's being corrupted by all these weird thoughts, right? And that's the question that we have to ask. Now, a question I posed to some of the internet pioneers about 10 weeks ago was, is the internet a force for evil or a force for good? And it was a very interesting question because it's a tool. Tools are tools. It's humanity on the other end that's whether they're force for good or force for evil. And this is where we have to come back and play a role. Are we here for good? Are we here for evil? And the internet is just one of those. Now, the trouble with this is privacy and trust. And where we are with privacy and trust today, that's where it's going to be the crux of the issue. We've hinted around this all throughout yesterday and all throughout today about privacy and trust. Privacy is dead when you're the product, but privacy isn't dead if you decide to take a stand. We don't have to believe that privacy is dead. You can make a difference in this conversation. Now, this guy has a point when he's not on TV for the wrong reasons, but this guy does have a point. Will the machines take over? Will the machines completely take over and kill us? Think about it. If you're a sentient machine, you realize that humans are lazy. Humans are inefficient. Humans that make tons of mistakes all the time. Why don't we just get rid of them? It'll be a lot easier, right? The machines are going to come to that logical conclusion. Or maybe. We'll see what happens. So, this is why one of the biggest areas we have to spend time on is really about the impact on artificial intelligence and machine learning. Will it make our lives better or will it make our lives worse? Now, I actually believe that it will make our lives better if we believe that we're going to augment humanity and we're going to change the way we actually move forward and use it to help us make better decisions, use us to prevent issues or outcomes that we don't want to achieve. So, sometime in 1986, I spent a summer in Caltech. Yes, I was a high school student. I spent a summer in Caltech, and I bumped into a guy who actually got a computer to recognize the letter A. And he said it took him 4 years. They spent a lot of money, spent a lot of time. He got his PhD helping to create computer vision. And so 4 hours later, we're at a party. I asked him, what are you going to do next? What do you think the answer was? No, lowercase a. So as you can tell. Now, why do I tell you this story? Because it wasn't until about 10 years ago with cloud computing that we actually had an opportunity to make AI work. In fact, a lot of the algorithms that we've looked at today were all developed in the 80s, but the compute power wasn't there. And so there are 7 things that are required to make AI successful. The first one is the ability to store lots of data in one place. The ability to get to compute power is the next piece. And the ability to compress time is a third. The good news is this is happening in the cloud, especially in the public cloud. We don't have to build those data centers anymore. We can procure that compute power. But the challenge is math talent. Finding the right math talent and finding the right AI talent has become very difficult. Now, I'm going to give you an extreme example, but I want you to yell out loud. I want you to tell me how much you think a PhD in artificial intelligence is making in Silicon Valley. Give me some numbers. 2 million. Anyone else? You laugh. Anyone else? 2.5 million. Mikhail is correct. It is 2.5 million for a PhD. That's 25 people. So we're saying one PhD in AI is worth 25 people. That's what Google, Facebook, all fully loaded is paying. A master's is getting about 1 million, and someone with an undergraduate degree is getting about 400,000. That is going to be the hardest part, getting the right math talent. You're going to have to find them. You can teach them. You can reskill. You can train. You don't all have to find PhDs. Now, the next piece is even more important. And I liked what the IBM team talked about yesterday, which is your industry expertise and your domain knowledge. This is your secret sauce. You do not want to lose that secret sauce. So when somebody sends 13 PhDs to come study your business, and they take your data, and they use that data to compete with you in the future, you've just lost your business. And I say this with all sincerity. Long time ago, Netflix used to come out and say, oh my God, it's amazing, we don't have anything, everything's in the cloud, we'd use Amazon, it's wonderful. I'm not blaming Amazon intentionally, but Amazon used all the performance data in Netflix to figure out how to compress videos better than Netflix could. They stole their operational data to beat the crap out of Netflix. Things like that can happen to you if you do give away your industry expertise, especially your training data. And what IBM said earlier, what I liked, is they made a statement, said your data is your data. You need to make sure all your vendors respect that. Otherwise, you will lose your business overnight and not realize what happened. The next piece, it's easy. It's AI as user experience. That's just happening wherever we are. Conversations as a service, mixed reality, mind-brain control. You're going to get that for free. The consumer side is going to figure that out. But the last piece is the most important one. Contextual decisions. What are you going to do next? Next best action, next best recommendation, right? That's where you want to spend your time on. And so when you look at this today, it's so much easier. All you have to do is spend time on your industry expertise and the next best action, and maybe find some PhDs. That's where we're going with the AI world. But where is it really? Well, there's a journey to AI. It requires predictive analytics. It requires machine learning. It requires you to get to cognitive computing. We're just at the beginning of this journey. We've got a lot to go. And so the reality is, by the time we get to machines that are going to kill us, that may be about 50 years from now. You got some time, right? But for the stuff that we have to do today to get to a next best action, there's still a lot of work ahead of us. Now, why do we want to do this? Because we ultimately want to deliver on mass personalization at scale. And so we take a couple factors. The first thing is context. Where do you stand? Your location, the time, how do you feel, your heart rate, what do you own, what's the weather outside? We take that context, and then what we do is we create a set of decisions. You guys remember Choose Your Own Adventure books? Start on one page, you end up on another page, you follow the journey, and you come back.
In the digital world, every choice is a demand signal. You know the context, you know the attribution, you know why something happened. And over time, you learn from those choices. And the third thing that actually happens is what we call anticipatory analytics. And in anticipatory analytics, you skate to where the puck will be. You make an educated guess with some levels of probability. So let me use an example here that's important. Who here pays for coffee in the morning, buys coffee? Raise your hands. I want to know who pays for coffee. OK. Sir, what's your name? Ronan? Roland. Roland, where do you get your coffee? Starbucks. Starbucks? Where do you live? Belgium. So you live in Belgium, you get Starbucks. Yeah, you don't have Starbucks in Belgium. I know Costa, yes. So you get Costa coffee. At what time in the morning you get Costa? 7:30. 7:30, and what do you order?
Just normal Americano.
Normal Americana. So using what we learned about context, choices, and anticipatory analytics, over a period of time we realized 90% chance it's in the morning. What time is it again? 7? 7:30, you get an Americano at Costa Coffee. OK, that makes sense. Now, let me ask you a few other questions. Roland, it's 25 degrees outside. Would you get an iced coffee? It's 30 degrees outside. Would you get an iced coffee? 37 degrees. Would you get an iced coffee? OK, Roland's a no on iced coffee. Now, I thought he was a yes, an 80% chance. It's now 0 after the third time. Now, would you get food with your coffee? Occasionally. So I might give you a scone as an offer, maybe a muffin. Would you take the offer?
No, a fruit, yeah.
Fruit, yes. Very, very interesting. That's my A/B test to see what other thing he's going to take. Let's give Roland a round of applause. Thank you, Roland. We just put context. We put the context, the choices, and the analytics together, and we got something very, very interesting. So what we're looking at over here is basically this set of what we call AI-driven smart services. Every single process that you know today is going to fit into this AI-driven smart service model. Whether it's customer experience, future of work, Internet of Things, blockchain, we're going to run down this piece. So I'll give another example. I get into a skyscraper. It's 25 stories. I'm usually on the 15th floor. It's 2 p.m. I walk into the elevator stall. 27-point facial analysis, gait analysis says, hey, it looks like it's Ray. OK, send an elevator down. Makes sense. Swipe my badge. It says, oh, it's Ray. There's a 95% chance he's going to the 15th floor. But wait, his boss is available. He's been trying to meet with his boss for the last 4 days. There's a 30-minute window. 80% chance. Would you like to go to the 25th floor? Pretty reasonable, right? But wait, there are free donuts on the 5th floor. Where do I go now? Do I take the donuts? Do I go here? Now, what we just did is we took a little bit of information, some digital exhaust, some digital footprint, and we used it to create segmentation. Then what we did is we created a set of immersive experiences. I took the context, I took the content, I interacted with that content, collaborated with it, and a bunch of information was spread out in different channels. I didn't say omni-channel. I said immersive experiences. So sometimes it's in my headset, sometimes it's on my mobile device, sometimes it's on the console in the elevator. Then personalization at scale comes into place. I use anticipatory analytics. I give you a catalyst, which is an offer, and then I give you a set of choices. I engage with the choices, and I have a value exchange. Sometimes it's monetary. I bought a coffee. Sometimes it's non-monetary. I schedule something. I create a recommendation. Sometimes it's consensus. We came to an agreement. And then I learn the cadence. Is that something that happens once? Does that happen on a repetitive basis? Does that happen on a dependency? And then I apply machine learning and come back and learn. And that's how we actually build every single AI-driven smart service. And we're using this to augment humanity. We're using this to make our lives better. In fact, what we're trying to do is deliver on a set of outcomes. First, by telling us what's going on, then by giving us a notification, then by making a recommendation. And then from there, we're going to automate that. That's how we augment humanity. And we start predicting things and ultimately preventing issues from happening. The biggest use cases are going to happen in prevention. Roland, I'm going to come to you one more time. Are you allergic to anything? Milk, gluten, nuts, artificial sweeteners? Dumb people. All right. So I don't know how to help you with that. But if you were allergic to nuts, maybe the app would never have nuts in the ingredients. I'm not sure if they can calculate the IQ of your barista and keep you away from them, but maybe if that was possible, they would do that as well. So prevention is the biggest use case, right? When we think about what's happening in prevention, imagine this. Think about Samsung. 8-week recall on the Galaxy Note 7, 100 devices. That's 8 sigma in quality. $8 billion recall. If I could actually reduce the recall rate from 8 weeks to 8 days, that would have been an $800 million recall. If I can go from 8 days to 8 hours, that would have been an $8 million recall. Now tell your CFO, what's $1 million to avoid $8 billion? Right? You see what I'm saying? The biggest use cases are going to be in prevention, compliance, regulatory issues, and using AI to help you solve those. So that takes us to the question, when do the robots take over? How do we avoid that issue? Well, let's start with something more basic. We have to figure out when we go to automation and AI and when we have human work. As humans, we're really good at creativity, thinking outside of the box. We're really good at handling complex issues that can't be modeled by math. We're really good at fine motor skills or physical presence that machines can't get to. But honestly, everything else, we're really bad at. If it's repetitive, we get bored and we make mistakes. If there's lots of nodes of interaction, we get confused because we can't remember who we're supposed to connect with. If it requires massive time to completion, we don't have the ability to scale. And if there's a huge volume, we're overwhelmed. But everything else we're good at. As you can see, there's going to be a lot of automation, a lot of augmentation as we go forward. So the societal question is, do we tax pepper? Who thinks we should tax robots? Raise your hands. All right, we got about a couple of people maybe. Seriously? Fine. All right, we'll tax pepper. But you get the idea. But here's the question I have. And the reason I bring this up is I fly 650,000 miles a year, or at least I earn 650,000 miles a year. I'm out 240 days. So I would imagine that flight time and flights should be automated, right? You get on the trolley or the train that connects you between the terminals. There's no train driver, right? There's no conductor, right? Think about all the major train accidents you've ever heard of. Train conductor was drunk. Train conductor was distracted on the cell phone. Train conductor missed something, right? Why don't we get rid of pilots? Think about it. 80% of the flight's automated anyways. The only time when there's an accident is during takeoff and landing. That's because it's human error. Yesterday, when I landed in Amsterdam, it was a completely automated flight. The pilot did not land the plane. It was fully automated. So how many people here would fly a plane without a pilot? Raise your hands. Ooh, you guys are adventurous. Half the room would do it. All right. So let's get rid of pilots. Anyone up for that? Sounds like we are. All right, but here's the reason we don't do that. Guys remember Captain Sully? The man who landed the plane in the Hudson River. 36 seconds late. No decision. Air traffic control says this is never going to happen. Everyone's going to die, right? Emergency crews are all over the place wondering where this plane is going to explode and land. The pilot lands the plane using his instinct, using his gut, using his intuition, using his years of experience flying planes, lands the plane on the Hudson. This is the question I ask you. Do you trust human intuition enough to have a pilot land in an emergency, or do you trust the machine? Because that's the question we're going to be asking every time. When you drive your car and every other car is an autonomous vehicle, you are the problem. Think about this. You're going to be priced out of the market because of insurance. You won't be able to drive because it's a crazy human. We have no idea what they're going to do. That's going to be the question. Now, look, we're human. We break the rules. We make the rules. We think outside of the box. I have to believe in humanity. I have to believe that our ingenuity, our experience can allow us to make a difference, right? I have to have that optimism. That's who I am. But other people may say, no, it's a human. We make sure everything is automated. Everything's in an algorithm. Those things are perfect. That's the crisis we're going to get to. So the last piece I have for you is about ethics. Right? And will we have ethics and what goes on? So the classic question, 2 autonomous vehicles get into a crash. Does the stockbroker live? Does the pregnant woman? Does the single mother? Does the sports star? Does the politician? Who lives? Anybody? I have the answer, actually, in case anybody ever asks you. You send the cars out without the people. You already know there's going to be an accident, and everybody is fine. All right, let's go another level. Now, I have to be careful. I am going to offend Canadians, I'm going to offend Chinese people, and I'm going to offend Russians. A autonomous vehicle hits a dog. What happens? Well, a autonomous vehicle hits a dog in Canada. The vehicle tries to find a human, assesses where the dog is, grabs the collar, notifies the owner that the dog has been hit, tries to take the dog to the nearest veterinary clinic or hospital. Very Canadian, right? Pretty good, okay. A autonomous vehicle hits a dog in Russia. What dog? Erase the video, erase the GPS, nobody was here, right? A autonomous vehicle hits a dog in China. Cost-benefit analysis, dog is dead, $500. Dog lives, it's a $50,000 fine. What's for dinner? All right, we'll move on. We actually don't think there's going to be a universal set of ethics, but we do ask you to have a set of design principles, and I think that's very important. You heard a little bit about this from IBM. We actually built a set of level 1 AI ethics in terms of design principles. First, make sure that everything is transparent. Second, make sure that's explainable. If there's a bias, that's okay. The whole point was to have a bias, but if it's an unexplained bias, make sure it's reversible. And once it's reversible, we got to be able to train these systems over time. And once we've done that training, if you don't want the machines to take over the world, you start the process with a human, you end the process with another human. Now, if you really don't want machines to take over the world, you stick another inefficient human in the middle of the process, and it'll be completely screwed up. No, but the point being is, that's how you keep that from happening. Now, what am I asking for you to do? I need 3 minutes. What I'm asking you to do is, are we going to be a force for good, or are we going to be a force for evil? I think we can do this, right? But the fundamental answer to a lot of the questions that we were talking about today, and I know blockchain might be able to provide this answer, is something I want to show you real quick. So I'm just going to cue the video and then talk about real quickly and then close this out. So let's go to this video, please.
We have sort of a digital feudalism, and we are all digital serfs.
Collecting and selling your data. Data is the new natural resource of our time.
It's the most sought after information on the black market.
Now, as more and more patient information is shared on the internet,
the lists are being sold. We don't know who is buying them.
It's not just Facebook, it's Google, it's Amazon, it's also insurance companies, retail companies, banks. We're creating a massive amount of data that's fueling lots of profits.
Our industry is going through a very significant crisis of trust.
Are you willing to change your business model in the interest of protecting individual privacy?
Congresswoman, I'm not sure what that means.
Everything from where you shop, what you shop for, what you search for, where you are, every phone call you make, your health information, your friends, everything that you touch creates data. And much of that is being sold without your knowledge, without your consent. The fundamental question here is, are you the owner of the data you create? Does it belong to you? Is it unique to you? And if it is, does it have a value? And if it has a value, shouldn't at least part of that come to you?
Our mission at Humanity is not what we can get from people, it's what we can give to people. We're looking to right a wrong and make people's lives better and give people what they truly deserve and what they own.
Everyone agrees that data should be property. And so we're building the 31st human right. We've developed an app that allows you to state your commitment that this is a human right and you believe in it, and to be able to then manage the consent and the permission of the use of your data as you so see fit, and allows companies that currently buy or aggregate human data to get better data. You have a trusted relationship with the human, and you can get more data. Everyone wins.
Now, I bring this up because here's where we are. When we had land, we had titles because we had resources there. When we had intellectual ideas and inventions, we had IP. If you want to survive in this digital area, if you want to be a force for good, we have to make inherent personal data, your DNA, your biometrics, your digital data and exhaust, a property right. And once you make that a property right, then you have a human right in data, and that's how you get there. And so that's my question to you. If you want to be a force for good, it is up to you. There is no need for despair. It is in front of us, and we can put that together if we can start by making inherent personal data a property right and working towards making that the 31st human right inside the UN. So thank you very, very much. This is kind of one of the things I've always wanted to do, and happy to be here.
Thanks, Ray.
All right, see ya.
Thank you.